Hello Struckpup, today I'm bringing you a build for the Mage. I decided to call this the Dragontamer Sentinel of Instability, and this is mostly because of the name of the Dragontamer set we're using, the Blade of Instability and the Sentinel staff. The build is all about balancing magical and fire damage, all about Aether manipulation to get some extra damage. That's why I've included not one, not two, but three skills that include Aether manipulation. I've also decided to include some different versions of the build in regards to skills or god skills, so pay attention to the footage that may follow after this for the different versions. Keep in mind that this also relies on Duelist chain reaction for extra crit damage. We are relying in some of the options on our power potion, power elixir for extra damage from that. And we're relying on Ring of Resonance for extra stuns each time we use a skill with cooldown. This is why we are using 3 skills with cooldown. One of the alternative setups is a Aether Blast setup. If you were looking for a way to combine this set with Aether Blast, we've got you covered. You can see I've decided to use a Mastered Breath of Fire, the Superior Step Between Worlds, the Superior Aether Blast, Superior Aether Vortex and Mastered Binding Light. For this setup I decided to go for an Action Missile with fire, just to have an extra fire skill. Another option and alternative that's worth testing might be the dual god skill setup, with both Superior Aether Blast and the basic Aether Storm, together with a Burning Tornado, so the Superior Tornado, the Superior Step Between Two Worlds, the Superior Aether Vortex and the Mastered Winding Light. It's a nice setup, it goes well with the set and it's worth testing out. So if you wanted something similar to try, this may be what you wanna be experimenting with. Now the next setup is more on the magical side, so we are stacking more magical passives as you can see. And we're using less fire skills, more magical skills. So both our teleporting skill, our blinding light, our etheric ray, all of those do magical damage. So for fire we're using a bit of breath of fire and some action missile. Now the third, and it's part of the final setup, so there's two versions of the final setup. The first final setup is the one I showed you, which was with more Aether manipulation. This is exact copy with the slight difference that instead of Aether manipulation we are using a more fire related setup, and here I've decided to include the skill, the passive skill that gives us extra 20% fire damage and extra crit chance based on the enemies that are burning around us. This replaces the skill that gives us 40% extra damage to the spells which are being manipulated but by Aether manipulation. So if you were looking for some variations of how to make this set work, this video may be to your liking. Keep in mind I'm also showing a few of the boss fights, not for all the setups because the time wouldn't be enough to make it a reasonably long video. But I'll try to show a few different boss fights in the end of the video just to demonstrate a bit more extra gameplay and how this fares compared to the other builds of the mage in regards to boss fights. So hopefully you would enjoy seeing the different variations, and let's move on to showing you some of the gear choices, skill choices, passive god skills arrangements and all of that together with all the different variations. For the gear I've decided to just include a few different comments regarding what can be changed, but more options would be available for the skills. The build is based on the Dragontamer set, also known as Kalidor Dragontamer set. It combines it with Blade of Instability, Relentless Sentinel, and Old Ring of Resonance for some good synergies. Blade of Instability is the main and highest source of damage of the build. While we are casting magical and fire spells, we are proccing those waves and they do the most damage from all the things that we have in our arsenal. This increases the damage, the crit chance, and a bit of damage reduction while standing static, so it's also a great choice. Key things about the build are high cooldown reduction, very high crit damage, and a good amount of crit chance to proc the crit damage. 400 crit damage comes from the gear from blessings, which is 10 times 40% crit damage. Then we get 200 from the 4 stacks of Duelist chain reaction, and we get another 150 or 180 crit damage from the god skills, depending on what you decide to take. You can even go all the way for a 200% crit damage god skills, but this will sacrifice a lot of HP, which you do need. Now let's talk about where to get cooldown reduction and crit chance. The best sources of cooldown reduction would be, and the only sources would be the helmet, the Blade of Instability, the Relentless Sentinel, and the 3 accessories. If you have to sacrifice cooldown reduction from any of those sources for crit chance, I would suggest the Relentless Sentinel. This gives you more crit chance than a ring or amulet can give you, and the cooldown reduction that you would lose, so you can kind of regain from a helmet, or a bit of it you can regain from the accessories. So if you are doubting whether to take a Sentinel with crit chance or cooldown reduction, if you have one with cooldown reduction and one with crit chance, and not single one with both bonuses, just take the one with the crit chance, something like this per se, or like this. If it has some flat damage and crit damage and HP, it's gonna be even better. Armor piercing is also welcome. The Blade of Instability does not give crit chance, but it can give some nice cooldown reduction, so keep that in mind. For the rings and amulet, prioritize something that gives both crit chance and cooldown reduction. This is kind of a very good row, this item. Regardless of which ring you get, try to have those two stats, and avoid getting a dragon ring unless it really has good mods. So Kane's Fury is good for 30% damage, Hotek is good for health and energy regain, and Ring of Radiance is amazing for extra cooldown reduction. On the amulet side, there are two great amulets, Phoenix Amulet and Amulet of Purifying Flame. We're not using god skills, so those would not do as good, and this one is also broken, so it even heals the enemies, not just you. So try to get one of those two with good mods, but if something like this drops with good crit chance and maybe some cooldown reduction, use it. Just try to focus on those stats. There are three items like the boots, legs and chest piece that you need to prioritize on health and maybe some energy or cost reduction, but prioritize HP over the other stats here. And the gauntlets are a great source of damage, so try to get flat damage. Something like this is fine, flat damage and crit damage. Of course it should be the correct set. So if you have something like those two gauntlets, one of them has crit damage and damage, the other one crit damage, damage and HP. You can see that the damage you're losing is 100 and something, and it's worth it getting that 16,000 HP. 40% crit damage is worth 200 and something flat damage and around 2000 flat HP. So if you have to lose 10,000 HP to get 3400 damage, do that. If you have to lose 30-40 crit damage to get 3000 flat damage, do that. Flat damage is the priority, but if you have such a case where you kind of are gaining just a bit of damage but losing shit tons of HP and even a bit of crit damage, just make a comparison, think for yourself and decide what is best. Now for the rings, as I said, you would want to be using Cold Ring of Resonance eventually, but you would need to do some invasion to farm it. My notes are broken and they do show the same progress on all notes except rank 1. Even on the one I've completed to 100%, it's showing something like this, which is very wrong. So here you need 4 corruption resistance nodes for a total of 60 corruption resistance. Once you get those nodes, you get those nodes, you get those nodes and those, go on, take Elixir of Power, then move on, get Duelist Chain Reaction, and in the end you should be powerful enough with some green items to get Aetheric of Resonance. If you're having difficulties, just keep farming more green items and eventually you should be able to handle those Chaos 6 nodes. This seems to sum it up in regards to the gear. Next you would see how I spent the skill points and the God Favor points. The skills I've decided to go with are Arcane Hail, the basic one, Superior Aetheric Vortex, Mastered Aetheric Ray, Aetheric Tornado Superior, Step Between Worlds Mastered, and Blinding White Mastered. I also took the Heroic Arcane Binding, Master of Equilibrium Superior, Quaish Shield Superior, Aether Intelligence Mastered. The two things I've mentioned in the gear section that I took from the invasion notes would be Elixir of Power and Duelist Chain Reaction. I showed you in the previous section that you just need to farm those nodes, then those nodes and move on to the Elixir of Power, Duelist Chain Reaction and eventually move down to Aetheric of Resonance. My notes here, as I said, are glitched. They're showing the wrong progress. It kind of got glitched a few days ago. So why we are taking such skills? We do need 3 skills with cooldown, so we can keep proccing Duelist Chain Reaction. This is great. It gives us 25 extra damage to enemies standing inside it. This is some extra mobility. You can down mode it if you need the points to work around something else. And this is great. It repels enemies, heals us, grants us energy. And those two skills we need to alternate and use Aether Intelligence on to keep increasing their damage. This stacks up with this damage, so we kind of can do one space, two space. In the meantime, we can do this space, we can port, we can use this. So it's kind of you kind of have to watch the recording, the gameplay footage recording to see what I'm doing. But it's very great. We keep proccing everything and it works out nice. There are some different versions, and on your screen now you should be seeing different versions of how the skills can be arranged, what other skills you can take, what other passives you can take. So pay attention to this. If you think something fits your playstyle better, use it. So experiment. It doesn't cost you anything to reset those skill points, it doesn't cost you anything to reset the god skills. So I will show you some different variations of the god skills that can accommodate to different things that you need for the build. So pick the setup you like the most and let me know what you think works best for this set. Next we are moving on to the god skills. As I said, there are few setups that I've decided to show you. This is the main setup that you're seeing. So this is kind of getting a bit of HP, a bit of cooldown reduction, and some crit damage. Not all crit damage, but some of it. But we have 26% HP, 24% damage, 150% crit damage, and even 7% cooldown reduction. We're losing some cost reduction, we don't really care much about it, we can handle it I think. But if you do need some extra energy, remove those 2 damage nodes, grab this energy node, and maybe try to find some other node with energy, or just grab this one and the energy, or this one and the energy. Or maybe you can try and remove something like this, lose some cooldown reduction, and then get those 2 energy nodes, or this and this energy node. So this is a possibility. If you remove this and this, you can grab some extra energy. Now you should be seeing some different trees with some descriptions above to tell you what it is. So this is one of the alternative versions and it's suggested for the dual god skills setup. The downside is that this doesn't give you much cooldown reduction from the god skills, so you would need to get some from the gear. Now this version here, the second alternative version, gives you less crit damage, more flat damage, and it tries to at least get some more cooldown reduction and HP for the setup. I'm not sure whether this would be good for the single god skill setup I've shown, but maybe it might be. Maybe it might be, so it's worth checking. Now this third alternative version is stacking as much HP as I can get. Again, 120% crit damage, 30% damage but 40% HP, and only 4% cooldown reduction compared to 9% from the second alternative version. So it's worth testing for any type of build if you do need some more HP and if you don't want to have such big crits. This is something to keep in mind. Now that you've seen the different versions of how you can arrange the god skills, I would finish the video with showing you some more gameplay footage and some boss kills with the different setups. So this is my final setup, except it's with the fire damage priority instead of Aether manipulation. You can see you just need to be mobile at some times, but then at other times you kind of need to be statting, and the most important would be to keep rotating fire spells with magic spells. This is the dual god skill setup. You can see I'm using the dome, using the Aether storm, using the Aether blast, and then rotating, leaving some other tornadoes every now and then to just keep damaging the boss. And now the final setup with my Aether manipulation. Kinda standard procedure. Thanks for watching this video, folks. If you've enjoyed it, you can let me know by hitting that button. And if you want to be notified when I upload more content, you could subscribe to my channel. Should you find yourself looking for some more Warhammer CHAOSBANE build videos, you can check the playlist for those that I've made. And in the description below this video you can find links to my Twitch, Twitter, Mixer and Facebook pages. You can also see those at the end of this video in the final sequence. Thank you again for watching this video and keep it cool, folks.